Welcome back to Adulthood Friends. This is the discussion-based podcast where two former childhood acquaintances, now friends, discuss the things that, adverb Josh,
Reluctantly.
yeah, reluctantly, the things that reluctantly matter
Reluctantly.
uh,
That's your adverb of the week.
of the episode.
Is
That's your
this of the
adverb of the
episode?
episode,
Still a
not
weekly podcast.
it definitely is not. And I'm Aya.
I'm Josh.
And today we've got an episode 61, just kind of a light topic again. You know how we like to talk about things that are just like kind of chill and nobody gets mad. So today our topic is anti-Semitism. So how does it feel to be Jewish right now? What is the form that anti-Semitism has taken in our own lives recently, and especially in the past year?
I think we can just get into it.
Let's
just jump
just get right into
right
it.
into it because we're doing this.
Because it's happening, whether we want it to or not. And we're back.
It is so fucking good to be back, Aya.
It is good to be back, Josh.
After over a year.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think our last episode came out
January 12th.
Hasn't been a year.
It hasn't been a full year, but
It's been a full year since we recorded, but
It-
that's not the same as
has
yeah,
it been
so
a full
look
year
at
since we
us.
recorded?
Look at us.
Did it take months to release that one?
Probably.
Probably.
Because you're like
That
a
was
perfectionist with the editing.
honestly, I think this episode is, I mean, it feels like a natural follow-up to Identity, especially, given the year that we've had.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, we were kind of afraid to, we're still kind of afraid to go.
I'm still
go
afraid.
there.
I was thinking, no.
We should
I'm
talk about
very-
why we're afraid to go there too.
I just like it's something I don't want to do. Like eventually it's like you feel like you need to do it, but
Yeah. But I think
but-
it's important for us to talk about this
Yeah.
topic. But we should definitely digress immediately and talk about.
okay, we'll
What
come
have you
back
been
to
up
our
to?
fears later.
Yeah.
Okay.
What have you been up to the last year, Aya? Let's give ourselves like 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. Let's do this quickly. You start. Yeah, you
Me?
go for it. Yeah, you're good
Damn
at
it.
you're gonna be really succinct.
What had happened over the past year? So much had happened.
Yeah.
I started working a job where I'm also teaching kids, like I'm tutoring kids,
Yeah.
math and English.
Math. Are you good at math?
I'm at least like,
Are you
I can-
better than
I'm-
like a 10-year-old at math?
I'm better
Yeah, I
than a
guess.
fifth. I'm as good as a fifth grader, maybe. So
Mm.
it's good enough to teach up to there.
That's all you need.
What else? Oh my God. It's like my brain just blanked.
It's almost too long. It's too long
It's
to be
been
able
too
to.
long.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff. I can tell you it's been a really tough year. I'll be honest. It's been a really tough year. One, kind of health wise for me, my back. I probably talked about this before, but my back, I had a horrible flare up with my herniated disc in my back.
Yeah, that sucks.
And it actually, I was bedridden for a while. I could hardly move. The worst pain of my life. It was a very dark time, actually. And I'm a pretty positive person, but it really messed with me. And to be honest, even right now, I'm still struggling with that. So that's not so good. And then I guess big news, but I mean, maybe it'll come up in a later episode more, but my father passed away. I mean, you know about that. I came back home. We had the funeral.
Yeah. I'm a good friend. I went to
You're
your
a good
father's
friend. You
funeral.
were there. It was nice. You cried and everything.
Yeah. I cried at your
The
so your
performance.
eulogy was great. I know that's not what it's about, but your eulogy really hit me because it was very like you disarm people with your kind of humor. And then you went into things that like I know so well that it was hard not to feel for you. Yeah. I'm a very empathetic person, so
You are.
I cry
You are.
easily. I do
No,
actually
it
cry
was-
very easily.
it
No
was,
offense to you, but I
The
was-
silver lining of, if I can call it that, of the whole thing coming back home. And it was pretty unexpected what happened. Again, I won't get into it all here, but I got to see you and other friends and people I love and
Yeah.
care about. The weird timing of it all was like, I came back home for the funeral, sat Shiva for a week, and then I went straight to Asia.
Yeah.
I went to Japan, and then I went to China with my girlfriend for my friend Leopold's wedding in China.
Yeah.
And that was just a crazy time. Just, that was a wonderful trip, but kind of, is tainted the right word? Kind of tainted by,
Of course. Yeah.
the loss and the grief.
Colored.
Colored by
colored
it?
by it.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
colored by it's a little more neutral.
It's less of a negative connotation, although it is fair that it has a negative.
It sounds weird, but talking about that, as tough as it is, and what happened, would probably be easier to talk about than this topic.
Yeah, because nobody's going to get mad at you for being sad
Yeah.
about your dad dying.
I guess I like to be liked. I don't like to have
Yeah.
views that could be controversial. I don't think I have controversial views in general, but the more you put yourself out there and you talk about your thoughts and opinions on things, the more that's a possibility.
Yeah.
And it's weird now. I think we felt we could talk about this topic, and I want you to catch us up on your life too. But I just want to say,
That's okay.
because I kind of segued into it.
No, I see how it is. No, that's fine. I actually was gonna jokingly just be like, I have nothing to update you on anymore.
No, I don't agree. You're like, I showed up to Josh's dad's funeral. But why I actually think we should be able to talk about
Okay.
this is we're not just talking about, we've done it before. We've talked about an issue in the world, and we usually relate it to us, but it may not be directly related in the
Yeah.
sense like it's not about us. This feels like it's about us because we're Jewish, we're Jews.
Right.
So why can't we talk about how we feel affected as Jews in the world today? And that may not be everybody's experience, but it'll be our experience. But that being said, I jumped ahead.
It's okay.
What were you up to
Yeah.
this past year, Aya?
Yeah. Well, can I go to that as well? So it'll
Oh,
relate to my life. Don't worry.
okay.
Yeah. So kind of similar. You know what? It's not necessarily that I want people to like me. I genuinely, it's gonna sound kind of hyperbolic, but I worry about my prospects for a job if
That's
I'm
fair.
outspoken about anything related to my life, or even just like that students would know that sometimes I don't tell students that I'm Jewish. Like I don't tell most people that I don't need to know unless I think they already like me. And then I think that it will be a net positive for
And you feel like it's
Jewish
safe.
opinion. And then I'm like, it's safe. Yeah. Cause if they already think they hate Jews, they'll just be like, oh, but I like her. So it's confusing to me that I hate Jews. I'm okay with being part of the cognitive dissonance that might make someone be less anti-Semitic, but I usually wait to divulge that,
Share
if
that.
ever. Yeah. So I don't have a bunch of conversations with people. I don't want people coming and being like, you believe this and this is what I think about. Like, I don't care. I don't need to talk to you about any of this. I don't want to talk to most people about this. I no longer feel like I'm going to change someone's mind. I'm not good at that, to be honest. I think if someone's going to do it, like, Josh, you're very good at, I'm about to give you a compliment. I think you're very good at really reaching out to people where they are and sort of their
It depends.
opinions. But you can believe that. This is how I feel. That's it. I
But
don't want
wait,
to
what were
do
you up to
that
this
weird
past
dance.
year, Aya?
Oh, and that too. Like, I don't know, like nothing crazy. Like I
Whole
taught.
year.
It's been a year, but it's mostly been like I finished teachers college. I started teaching here and there a little bit, like teaching
Congratulations.
high school. Thanks. I mean, I'm back to supply teaching now because I was covering for medical leave and the person
Wow.
came back and I had to say bye to my students, which was bittersweet. It's nice because I don't have homework now. Like supply teaching is much easier in terms of what you have to do after school, but you don't have your own class. You don't have your own kids that are like, hey. But I've been mostly supply teaching at the school where I was. So now I do have them all kind of coming and being like, Miss I, Miss Isha, Dan Isha, or whatever they call me, and they're like, "Hey, are you gonna be in our class today?" And they're all excited and like way happier to see me than they normally would have, because now they're like, "Oh, we miss you," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks, that's nice." They don't tell you they like you while you're their teacher. Anyways, so maybe they don't like me. I don't know.
Do you remember where you were when we
Here.
started this podcast in your life and where you are now?
I think I was finishing my degree when we started. Or was I finished? I don't know. I don't know anymore. Oh, I think I was finished. I was done. Yeah.
Were
And then
you?
I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And
And now you're
here we are. I'm
doing
almost an adult. Yeah. I almost have like a real
almost.
person job. It's pretty crazy. It's actually weird because it's like, oh, I could have like a regular person salary, like a thing that you can depend on to have money. Stability. That's the word, stability. I might
Oh,
have
I don't
stability
know what
soon.
that is.
I know. And I didn't either. So here we are. Yeah. So that's about it. That's really like we went to New
Yeah.
York over the summer. I don't know. What else is there really to
There
like?
was an
There's too many
election,
things. There was an election.
well, in America.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I don't want to talk about that. Ew.
What I just it happened.
Yeah, it happened. That's not something
For
in
those
our lives.
listening decades from now,
No one needs us to tell them
for
that.
those listening decades
Guys,
from now, Donald Trump just won again.
in case you weren't sure what happened, in case you have no idea what's
Yeah.
going on in the world and you just popped in to
Yeah.
listen to Adulthood Friends, and then you were like, oh, is there an election? Can you imagine
Yeah.
if this is how someone's finding out that Donald Trump got elected again?
The Democrats stole the election last time, but this time
Oh
they
my
just were like,
God.
nah, never mind.
I don't want I definitely I don't feel like talking about that, and I don't think I need to. I think enough people are talking about that stuff. Yeah. Okay, so that's my life. Yeah, I
Yeah,
teach
so let's
sometimes, kind of. Yeah.
well that's great. I think you were in an I can see on the graph you just going upwards. There's an upwards trajectory in your life, and I think it's amazing to see that happen.
I don't know what I
And
mean upwards.
I do. I
I'm
think
just
so.
I'm getting to where
My
I want to
POV.
be, so upwards
That's
towards where I want to
yeah,
be.
that's what that means.
I do enjoy working with, like, children rather than adult. When I was teaching the university, it was different. It was a lot easier, but it was also, like, I don't know. Now you get, like I love, like,
I mean, we
weird
share that kind
teenagers.
of
They're hilarious. Yeah, and now you get to be a teacher too. Fun.
to sort of. This is
Yeah.
not my intention in lifestyle. I'm still a filmmaker. I don't know if you know this, I make movies.
What?
It's
I can't
crazy.
believe you haven't told us that. We've had
I finished a new
60
movie. I
episodes.
totally forgot that
Oh,
because I actually
yeah.
talked about it way back.
Here, and now
You
you're
know, I
gonna
was
tell us
still
the
working
whole
on it. Well,
plot.
no,
Okay,
I'm
let's
not.
hear
But
it. Yeah.
I finished
Let's
F minor. I'll talk about it another time. But I finished that short. I was working on the dark comedy, and we're sending it out to festivals now. That's the whole
okay.
thing. Okay, but let's.
No, I still have to watch it. I will watch
Oh,
it.
you haven't watched it yet?
No, I don't
Oh,
do them.
wow.
I'm a terrible friend in most
That's
ways.
cool.
I
It's
will be
great.
at your father's
It took
funeral,
me.
but I
It,
won't watch your movie.
it's okay. It took me a year and a half to make, and it's 20 minutes to watch. But no worries.
Oh,
It's
it's
all
only
good.
20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. That actually yeah.
What'd
You
you
know
think? I
what?
made an
Let's
hour and
just
a half
pause.
long
I'll
movie
go
already.
watch it, and I'll come back. Well,
Yeah. Another time. Another time.
alright, so we caught up really quickly. I'm very proud of
I
us,
think relatively for what's
relatively.
happened.
Yeah,
Why don't we, I was thinking about where do we start when we talk about something like this, right?
yeah,
And I feel like we should start at the thing that kind of shook up our world.
okay.
Tell me if you agree.
I agree. Good.
You know what
That's
I'm
a
going to
good
say?
I think everyone should know what you're gonna say. They probably
Really?
don't, but
There's a lot of people who don't. The people who do, they're like, yeah, that's obvious. And the people who don't are,
yeah. And
well,
that's
this is
fine. You
it.
know what? Not everyone needs to know about everything. I'd
It's,
almost rather people don't sometimes. You don't know? You don't care? Great. Just live your life. It's fine. Anyways, okay.
yeah. And
Yes.
obviously, what I was about to say was,
Why are you gesturing at me?
oh, I
You're gonna
see if
talk
we're on
about
the same
October
page.
7th. Yeah.
Whoa, no, that's not what I was gonna yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
That's a good one, Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
October 7th, 2023 caused a huge it made a huge impact, big change, I would say, in the world on a lot of people. But we're here to talk about how it impacted us as Jews,
Yeah.
right? It's the big thing, I would say, relatively recently. And for those who don't know, do you want to get us caught up on what happened on October 7th?
Do I? I don't. No, I
You're
don't
like,
want
no,
to. I
not
don't want to
you.
think about any of that
No,
stuff.
you shouldn't. Okay, you know what?
Do you
I'll do
want
it.
to? We
I'll do
do if
it.
we
I'll do
have
it.
to. I think you
Do
should
we not
do
have
it. But I
somebody has
also
to, right?
do we have to? I think people just go Google it if you don't
Well,
already know. Or
I
should
mean,
they
we
not?
need
Should people not Google it?
I don't know,
I
some
don't think
people,
I
they
don't
get
want to
all
be the
their
people
news
giving people facts right
no,
now,
s
though. We're just
some
talking
people
about
get all their news from adulthood friends, so
okay, but I'm sorry. This is I'm incapable
okay.
of this right now.
Maybe I guess I was scared to go there, so I tried to throw it on you. But
I
anyway,
know.
I guess
You
we
know I'm
shouldn't
worse at
have to
that.
feel
Yeah.
this way. Okay, it
I
was
also
a
just don't feel like even thinking about it in great detail. It's like painful to think about.
yeah, I can't help but think about it constantly now, especially that we're talking about it for the
Yeah.
next little well, about anti-Semitism for the next little while. And I do think it's highly linked to anti-Semitism, but we'll get to that. On October 7th, 2023, there was a huge, horrible terrorist attack in Israel where basically Hamas, this terror organization from Gaza and the Gaza Strip, attacked. They came across the border into Israel and just kind of went crazy. They murdered, they raped, they set people on fire, and they attacked a music festival that was out in the desert and just mass murdered people there. It is really horrible saying all this out loud right now. It was really shocking. And it feels like it hasn't really ended in a way as well. Israel was kind of able to fight them back, although 1,200 people were killed. And since then, Israel's responded in the Gaza Strip and it's left a whole bunch of destruction there.
They
Um,
also took hostages that they
I
still
totally forgot. That's a huge thing.
yeah.
They took Israeli hostages, not just Israelis, actually, but internationals that were there as well. Some are still locked up there, are
A
still
lot
being
died, a
held
lot
hostage, like 100 or so.
came back. Yeah.
Some came
100 are
back.
still in there?
They say 100 are still in there, although it's not certain that all of them are alive, but they're still hostages. There was a deal made about a year ago for a good number of the hostages. And then Israel also succeeded in rescuing some, and then they also failed in rescuing some. We're talking about Israel right now. Israel is another country. We don't live in Israel, right?
My brother lives in Israel with his entire
Oh,
family and the vast majority. So,
well,
yeah.
that's what we're getting to. Why does it
Yeah,
matter so
okay.
much to us as Jews or as
Yeah.
people in general? Is it just matter to us because we're linked to it with family, or what does it mean in that sense? And how does it link to anti-Semitism, for example, right? So you have family in Israel. I have family in Israel. I've
Yeah.
got cousins. I've got direct cousins. My uncle, my dad's brother lives in Israel and his family. and they've been dealing with constant rocket and missile attacks on, I think, 7 fronts.
Mm.
They've been attacked from the Gaza Strip. There have been attacks from the West Bank as well. There have been attacks from Yemen has sent drones. There was attacks from Hezbollah in Lebanon. There was attacks from Iran directly with ballistic missiles. And Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, has kind of got their terror proxies that have been doing this. So like Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, Iraqi and Syrian militants, I think they've all been kind of proxies of Iran. So that's worth noting. But anyways, yeah, they've been attacked from all sides for over a year, which means our families have been attacked. So all of this to us does link to anti-Semitism,
Yeah.
but it's a little complicated sometimes to explain to people who don't understand why. What does
Can
it have to do?
I can jump in. I think you did it.
Please. I'm
I really didn't
panicking.
wanna do that part, so thank you. There was something about hearing about what was happening and what had happened and what was still happening because it was a very chaotic and scary time. So for me personally, my mom called me to tell like I try to avoid looking at much news. I didn't know what was going on. My mom told me, and it was on the Saturday that she told me. And we hadn't heard from my brother because they're pretty religious. They don't use their phones on Saturday, but they were safe. But we didn't really there was a lot of uncertainty. Even beyond so yes, all my cousins live in Israel. My oldest brother and his 4 kids, who are the closest thing, along with my other niece to my own children, live there. Everyone except my parents, my one brother, and my uncle, family-wise, live in Israel, and my grandma right now. But hearing about what happened felt like a big blow in how safe, I guess, I
Mm,
foolishly had started to feel. So I can talk from my personal experience, and I think maybe that's the best thing to stick to because so many people have different experiences, and I'm not looking to deny anyone else's, but this is what it's been like for me to be Jewish right now. I think I had kind of, I don't want to say dismissed, but I had always felt like for most of my life, I luckily got to feel like being Jewish isn't as scary as it used to be. Like the Holocaust is over, the pogroms are over. Yeah, sometimes in some places it's not safe to be Jewish, but like here in Canada, I'm safe in different areas. There's some place in the world where you're safe and most people don't hate us other than your classic neo-Nazis and people with extreme beliefs of various types that I don't need to list, but there's always some people, but it didn't feel like it was going to be most people, honestly. So after October 7th happened, it felt, I mean, it is the biggest. It doesn't even, like the numbers aren't even just the only thing, but like it's the biggest attack on Jews since the Holocaust, and it
yep.
felt like it, and it felt like you're not allowed to be I don't know, you're not allowed to feel safe to be a Jew anymore, and I know our last episode was identity, and I was like,
This is
"How
the weird
Jewish
thing,
am
right?
I?" And I remember feeling like, "Oh, I'm for this, I am definitely."
It's weird how things like this kind of make us feel more in touch with our identity, right? Because last episode we were talking all about our identity
Mhm.
and sometimes the ways in which we don't feel that. And I'd say, I know this is very emotional to talk about, sorry.
Yeah,
Um,
I cry easily, don't worry about it.
I think some people don't really realize how real this feeling is. And sometimes
Mm,
we feel a little gaslit almost into believing that we shouldn't be feeling this for some reason.
yeah.
It's like, hey, this thing happened all the way over in Israel, in the Middle East. They call themselves the Jewish state. But is it really related to us? Why do we care? And yes, we have family there, but beyond that,
Well, the
eh,
family makes a difference too, though, because
of course, of
'cause
course.
I was just gonna
Um,
say, like, I had an aunt, one of my family members that I visited. They were hiding as well as the other families next to them, but they came out and their neighbors are like, entire families of their neighbors are dead. It's not this isn't like
yeah,
a far away thing for
that's what I'm trying to
us.
get to
Yeah,
as
and I
well.
know
For
that's what you're
like,
trying yeah.
yeah, so like most Jews, I would say, have some connection either really close or not
Yeah.
that far away to Israel in some way. I mean, even just
Even
people
just
like
emotionally
that too, because of
to
what
feel
it means to Jews to
yeah.
have this Jewish state following all the times we've been persecuted in history and having this place that's ours in a way that can kind of stand up for us. That's what it's supposed to be, right? For example, a personal thing on my end, there was, and this is outside of like my family, which I have there. There was a guy that I went to USC with, a filmmaker,
Yeah.
and it turned out his sister and brother-in-law, so sister's husband, were murdered in their home by Hamas while I believe it was while they were shielding their kids. Even the kids might have gotten shot or something, but they survived. But literally protecting their kids in their home. And again, the terrorists went home to home. It felt very personal. I kind of want to point this out, and I don't mean to compare atrocities here, but a lot of people call it like Israel's 9/11 because, it was this mass terrorist attack that changed everything for the country. But even taking away the number of people per capita in a way how that was more and all that, it was different in a sense because, 9/11 was absolutely horrible. It was also in some ways kind of impersonal. Planes flew into buildings and that caused all the death and destruction. But in this terrorist attack, groups of individuals went home to home, entered the homes, murdered people, took hostages, did horrible things to them. It felt like a very, very personal attack.
Yeah.
On top of that, it felt like the world didn't respond with sympathy. I mean,
No.
many people did, but immediately there was a lot of justification for it,
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
lot
what the
of
fuck? Yeah.
contextualizing it in a way that we didn't see with things like during 9/11, for example. Like, we have to understand why the terrorists crashed the planes into the buildings. You didn't usually
Yeah,
hear
you have
that.
to understand why someone tortured the parents in front of the children
Yeah,
before they burned the whole house down. You have to
that's
understand why.
yeah.
No, fuck you. No, we don't. I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, and, look, I do
You
understand
can
in
take that out.
general that is the guttural emotional reaction that a lot of us felt when we saw some of this justifying, right? And people wanted to immediately talk about the geopolitics and the way, what was happening, the Palestinians and how they felt as a people and what was going on there. And all that stuff is obviously fair to talk about, right? But obviously, when somebody's just suffered such a blow and an attack, people, they want to express how hurt they are. And I want the world to understand the pain that they're experiencing, and it felt like a lot of that pain was, I don't know, swept under the rug or denied.
Yeah.
And of course, then we started to see the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories kind of pour out in a way that I'd only read about and heard
Yeah.
about following things like the Holocaust. That's where it starts to become a lot more related than it might at first seem. Yeah, this is it is obviously, and we knew this was gonna be very hard to talk about. I don't know about you. I've had some tough conversations with people with all different kinds of perspectives. People who are just random people, and then people who are really good friends. It's caused division with some people where I think it actually has destroyed some of my friendships. And I'm someone who does not. I don't think it's on my end either. I think
No.
it's just
I can't imagine it
I'll
would
do
be.
anything to hold on to a
I
friendship.
know. You love having friends.
And then there's other people we disagree, but we disagree respectfully, and that's all good. As long as we're talking, I think that is a good thing. I think we talk and we can try to understand each other and our different perspectives. At the heart of this, I think what we wanted to kind of dive into is also this fear that I think we're feeling right now as individuals, but also as like people.
Yeah.
And I feel very tied to that. And I think there's also this feeling of like, it's a little hard to explain, but you know how, especially in the West, there's been a lot of effort made to kind of understand what minorities go through,
Oh, but we
what
don't count. Jews don't
well
count.
well, that's what
Jews don't
I'm
count
trying to
for completely in either form. Like in
well,
either, we
that's what
don't.
I wanna get
Yeah.
to a little bit because especially I don't know about you, I think we both kinda consider ourselves progressive Jews, right?
Hmm.
I would use that terminology in the sense that I feel pretty liberal minded. I think it's really important to care about the little guy, to care about the minority, to really understand everybody's
Hmm.
feelings, and where they come from. And if someone has an identity, to try to understand, to kind of not define it for them.
Right.
People get to kind of define their own identities. And it was very important to believe people and groups,
And believe us when we
minorities.
talk about our experience and what it feels
Yeah,
like and what it
for
is.
example, during the Me Too movement or during BLM, these were times when progressives would argue we should really listen to what's going on because there may be things that we don't understand that other people have gone through and the kind of context of their pain and things like that. So cool, great, that's a good thing. But it feels like we're at a time now where Jews are doing that and trying to express themselves. And it feels like the progressive side isn't counting Jews in that. At least to me,
Yeah.
I think to
No,
you as well.
no,
In
we're being referred to as colonizers when literally
colonizers are
there's
being
no
referred to
place to
as
colonize from. Like
yeah,
colonizers have a home country. What's our home country?
we're being considered white when yes, there's I
Some of us are.
Yeah, some of
Not
like
everyone.
I'm
So many
Ashkenazi
are not.
background, you're part
Yeah.
Sephardic background. I pass as white for sure. And in our day and age and how we talk about race, for example, and
Yeah,
that's been a big
yeah.
conversation here.
Oh god, I don't wanna get into
Definitely.
that.
I just
Ugh.
want to say, yeah, definitely I get white privilege, you might say, right? I'm going to get
Mm,
probably pulled over by the police less,
right.
things like that.
Yeah,
But if we go back not that far in history, it's also true that most of my family was slaughtered for not being white.
yeah,
That is a true thing. And that is kind of what I grew up
yeah,
understanding that I'm not the same. It doesn't matter how much my family wanted to assimilate and be
yeah,
the same. There was always people who said, you're different. And part of
yeah,
sometimes our identities come out of other people telling you you're different.
yeah.
Right now, I think we're feeling that quite strongly. If we tell
Mhm,
somebody something feels anti-Semitic, somebody then says, no, it's not anti-Semitic.
mhm,
It's like
mhm.
if a black person tells you, hey, I find that racist. The progressive thing to do is to be like, hey, let me listen to that. That's something I should pay attention to. I shouldn't just immediately be like, I don't feel racist. Like, I'm not, I read
And
a
people
book that
do,
tells me
but
I'm
they
not
shouldn't.
racist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Now,
that's
is
not
it
the
true?
progressive thing to
Yeah.
do.
Is it
It's
true that there are people who weaponize all these things? Do people weaponize anti Semitism and weaponize racism? Of course.
yeah,
Right. But should that be the barometer for listening to people talking about what they're going through? I
yeah,
don't think so. I have a story actually that I can share if that's
please.
okay.
Yeah.
And it relates to the word Zionism. Since the attacks, I feel like this word has become, I can almost, we could see there's a tension already. I can see in your
Yeah.
face that I said the word Zion. This didn't used to be a dirty word, and I still don't think it should be a dirty word. It's not. But it's been made that way, I feel, by a number of people. And I don't know about you. I've always defined myself as a Zionist. How about you?
So, okay, so this is where I get which I shouldn't, because being
You're
a
just afraid to
Zionist,
say it.
yeah, and I think about, like,
But now we have to really be
someone
careful
finding it and being
yeah.
like, "She's declared herself a Zionist. She's a bad person in all of these different ways." So a Zionist just means that you believe that Jews should have their own country to live in?
Yeah, it
Is that an
specifically was a
insane thing to believe to feel?
yeah, well,
And
it's a movement, right? It was a
yeah.
movement, and it's always has been a movement in the past for the self-determination of the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland, right? That's important to note that for Jews, Israel is our ancestral homeland. What does that mean? It means that you dig anywhere in the country, you're going to find Jewish artifacts because once upon a time it was a Jewish state and it was called Judea. We're called Jews because we're from Judea,
Okay,
right? Does that mean I want to talk about whether
but
other
there are
people can be
also
considered
like, a
indigenous or
lot of
not?
people live there for
Sure,
a long
sure.
time, so I'm not
I don't want to
we're not
deny
the
any of that.
only ones with okay, okay.
You see how we feel the need to bring that up though, right?
Yeah, I feel
Because
like
we
I'm
know somebody
walking on
else is like
eggshells here, this is horrible. I hate this
exactly
so
that.
much. You're doing a good job. I'm just gonna let you talk. Okay, you go
No,
for it.
no, I'm gonna want you to save
And
me
then they'll
soon.
just be mad at you, and I'll be like, "I don't know, I'm just on a podcast. I'm
Well,
just here
so
listening to Josh."
the reason I'm bringing up Zionism in this case and why I'm pointing out that I define myself this way is because under that definition, that's something I believe in the self-determination movements of many peoples, of most
Mm,
peoples, any peoples, right?
yeah,
That can be a really important thing for a people to have that. I hope that for us Jews, and I hope that for the Palestinians, and I hope
mhm,
that for the Kurds. I
yeah,
hope that for so many peoples. But there's this idea that the Jewish self-determination movement is kind of in conflict with another self-determination movement. I understand the argument, but just at its core, that is what that means. And
yeah,
once upon a time, that was a movement to make Israel happen. Today, Israel exists. So
mhm.
calling yourself a Zionist today is kind of funny because it already exists. Really, it's more about believing in the continued existence, I guess, of the state of Israel, which of course, we're
Which
like,
is
yeah,
something that we have to constantly argue for,
well, that's the point. So when
but
we
it's
hear someone
constantly
is
questioned.
yeah, when we hear someone is anti-Zionist, we hear we want to destroy, demolish your homeland, your home state, this place that feels so important to you, that is linked to your identity. And it is linked to Jewish identity, not just
Mhm.
our
Yes,
history, but our
yes,
culture, our holidays are all linked to it. People don't realize how integrally that is linked, right? We're Jews not just by religion, but we're Jews by it's an ethno religion, right? We talked about
yeah,
this. It's an identity.
yeah,
It's an ethnicity. Even if you don't believe in any faith, we come from this bloodline. I always say it's kind of like a tribe, like the native tribes, right? Like you can't easily join a tribe. You can, if you it's like converting to Judaism, right? Like
mhm.
it's not that simple. You have to be accepted by the tribe and everything. You don't go around trying to convert people because you're a
Unless you're a
nation
Jew
that
for
has a
Jesus,
bloodline.
but then you're not asking them to convert to Judaism exactly.
I said this before, but there's a story that I wanted to bring
Yeah,
up to
yeah,
kind of
tell us.
explain this feeling. It was a friend of mine who I used to live with, who she's a progressive person as well. And again, a good friend of mine. She came up to me and she asked me a question. And at first, I thought the question was sincere. But as it went on, I started to realize it was maybe not so sincere, and maybe it was searching for an answer she already had in mind.
Mhm.
But anyway, she came up and she asked me about Zionism. And she asked, isn't Zionism really just racism? And there's a lot of people, by the way, who believe that Zionism is racism. Before they even know the definition, they've heard that Zionism is racism. It's just something they've heard. That can be traced back to the Soviet propaganda, and there's a whole
Mm.
history to that. But okay, Zionism is racism, she says. And I say, I don't think that's what Zionism is. And I told her, I think it's the self-determination movement for the Jewish people. And she goes, yeah, but I don't know. I was talking to a friend, some people, and they said that Zionism was just racism. And I'm like, well, I'm telling you, it's not the definition. It's not what it is. And she's like, well, why should I listen to you and not this other person? Again, I don't think that was being asked sincerely, which is what I think was sad. But anyway, I think they were trying to tell me that I think
Right.
Zionism is racism, but felt they couldn't just tell me that.
Mm.
That being said, I said to them, are you a feminist? That's what I asked. I said, are you a feminist? And she said, well, of course I'm a feminist. And I was like, yeah, but isn't feminism just man hatred? And they're like, excuse me, of course not. Feminism is actually about the equality of the sexes. And not only is it a good thing for women, but it's a good thing for men too, who are also victims of the patriarchy. And she went on and on about that. And I was like, yeah, but I've heard from other people that it's actually man hatred. And like, yeah, well, those people are kind of extreme and that's not really what it is.
Right.
I said, well, why should I listen to you and not these other people? And she was like, because I'm a woman and I'm telling you
Mm.
what feminism is. I said, well, I'm a Jew and I'm telling you what Zionism is.
Yeah.
And that did end the conversation for that person at the time because it really was coming out of, I think identity was really the
Yeah.
most important thing to them in that case. But that's where it feels like it's not equal. It's not the same. We're not being given the same kind of
Yeah. Like
courtesy.
you're right. And there's a few things in there as well, because like she mentioned, there are always extremists on every
Mm,
side. And this is the vast
yeah.
majority.
Every survey that's been done, over 90% of Jews identify as Zionists. That's why I wanted to bring this up, which means if over 90% of
And that's including
people
all
believe
us
something,
secular, very
yes.
secular, not tied to the
Yeah.
religion. And yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge number, which means when you say things like, "Oh, I like Jews, but I don't like Zionists,"
Hmm.
you're actually not making much of a differentiation if most Jews are Zionists. Maybe you should listen to why most Jews consider themselves Zionists. Is it because most Jews consider themselves racist? Is that why? No, it's because they have probably a different definition than you have in mind. And maybe you should listen to the people who came up with it and what they intend and what they mean by it and what it means to them. That's why I bring up that, because I think there's an anti-Zionism movement right now. I'm going to be very careful with my wording here. I think it's very closely linked to anti-Semitism. I don't think every person who says they have an issue with Zionism is anti-Semitic. I think there are definitely non-anti-Semitic arguments to be made. But many times, many times, it seems that when you are saying you're anti-Zionist or you have an issue with the Zionists or the Zios or the Zio-Nazis, you're really just replacing the word Jew
Mm.
in many ways. And even if you're not, this is what most Jews or many Jews will hear because, like they said, most Jews identify as Zionist. That's, I think, been a huge source of pain for a lot of Jews. And maybe I won't talk about a lot of Jews. I'll talk about me. We can talk about ourselves. This has been really, really painful because there's signs out there now like Zionists get out, Zionists leave. Some people just straight up say Jews go back to Europe.
Yeah.
um,
Go back to the
and then
place where
and
they
then when
already
you're
tried to
yeah,
exterminate you.
exactly. And then
Yeah.
when they're in Europe, they're like, you need to leave Zionists. It's like, where?
Yeah.
And
There's
also,
no place that we're safe. Like,
yeah. And people, again, just to point out, yeah, some Jews pass as white, many Jews, Ashkenazi Jews.
but not if
Then,
they do
then there's,
something that makes them, like, not if they go to a Jewish school or if they go to a synagogue. It
hmm
doesn't matter how you look if you do
yeah.
anything that makes you targetable. Yeah.
And then, of course, Mizrahi Jews, there are plenty of dark skinned Jews. And a lot of people don't know this who call Israel, for example, the Jewish state, a white colonizer state. They don't realize it's majority non white,
Yeah.
majority people of color. Mizrahi Jews, Jews that came from Arab countries. There's definitely a lot of
Like
Jews that were kicked
half of my
out.
family.
And yeah, your family, right?
Well, they
People
went
forget.
to Arab, but Persian, but whatever. Yeah.
Well, Jews were ethnically cleansed from not just Europe.
Yeah.
They're ethnically cleansed from Europe. They were murdered there, but they were ethnically cleansed from the Arab world. There's hardly any Jews left in the Arab world. There used to be amazing, bustling Jewish populations in these places, and there aren't anymore. And Israel absorbed a lot of these people because they had nowhere else to go.
And they were kicked
And
out with the establishment of State of Israel as well, of the Arab,
exactly.
like the Arab countries. Yeah.
Exactly, right? And again, there's different narratives about the establishment of the state of Israel. For Jews, it was a war of independence, and for Arabs, it was the Nakba, right? This disaster. And they talk about the refugee problem that was created for Arabs at that time, for Palestinians.
Mhm.
But people forget there was a huge refugee crisis amongst the Jewish population,
Yeah.
not in Israel, but all around it in the whole Arab world. It was, I think, something like a million, close to a million Jews were ethnically cleansed or forced to leave, but they were saved by Israel and that they had a place to go. And it's one of the reasons that Israel means so much to Jews is because it really does feel like this safe haven where if and when we get persecuted somewhere else, we always have this place now. That's kind of the difference in the world. Because in the past, we got persecuted throughout all of
Yeah.
history. Didn't matter where we were. At some point, something happened, and then we had nowhere to go. Now we do, and that's why it means a lot. And it doesn't mean we agree with the government of
Of
Israel
course
at
not.
any given time. And that's a
Yeah.
lot of people will argue and they say it's not anti-Semitic to criticize the Israeli government. And you know what? You are
Of course
absolutely
not.
a million
Yeah.
percent correct.
Yeah.
You absolutely can, and you should.
But criticizing or continually questioning the right to exist is anti-Semitic because you're saying you don't deserve, you're not allowed to have a safe haven. We don't really care what your suffering has been or it still is. You
Yeah.
don't get to have a safe place. You don't get to
Yeah.
have that haven that you're talking about.
That's part of it for sure. And of course, there's also an element of Jews feeling like, yes, you technically can criticize the government, but there sometimes feels like there's a hyper focus on just the Jewish state, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, people
even
who
though,
have no idea what's happening anywhere else in the world will
yeah, it's like a
somehow have an
select, it feels
opinion.
very
It's like,
selective. Now,
you're
of
not
course,
well
this,
informed. Why do you think you're well informed on this topic for whatever reason?
it,
Josh, I knew I'd say things I already regret because anyway, someone's gonna listen to this and be like, and I don't know that I'm saying anything bad, but it feels like I'm not
it feels
supposed
like
to
someone's
say
going
any of
to
this
find
stuff.
something bad in what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it feels like I'm gonna have to have conversations with people that I don't want to have. You talked about one conversation you've had. I feel like you picked one of the more positive ones almost
Well,
because I've heard some of the other ones that you've had. Because we talk. We haven't been talking on the podcast, but we have talked. Of course
yeah,
we have. We've been talking over the past year and
we've been
and
commiserating over the past
commiserating,
year.
that's the word I was trying to think of the word. We've been commiserating over what it's like, and we've talked about doing an episode on anti-Semitism, and we've been afraid or reluctant and all of those things because it's hard, because it brings up things that are not pleasant to talk about, because why do
Because
we
it's
always
causing
need
division.
to? Why do we always have to work so hard to tell people that we deserve to be alive? That's kind
Yeah.
of what it feels like sometimes.
Well, what it
I don't know.
specifically feels like is when we try to talk about that, somebody will inevitably say,
But what about?
"But what about? Oh, you're dealing with this? Well, these people are dealing with that."
But we're not
Uh,
denying anyone else's
No. Why
anything.
not yes and?
Yeah,
Why
we've
not
done
yes
that.
and? It causes so much division, to deny people's I'm gonna straight up say this right now. I do not deny the suffering and pain of the people who are involved on both sides of the conflict over there. That includes Jews, of course, as I'm talking about, and the Palestinians and the Arab populations, right? There's so much suffering to go around.
Of course.
And I'm saying this not because I need to say it, but because it's something I actually feel like I say all the time and we should say all the time and we should acknowledge. If somebody else wants to talk to me about the pain that they experienced, you know what?
Yeah.
Please, I will listen to your pain. I'm not going to start denying it because I have a narrative in my head. I'm going to listen to you. At least I'll try to listen to you, right? I'll do my best. And I should. I should really take it. I don't have to agree with every one of your facts to listen to the pain that you've experienced. I think one of the big issues we are finding is happening, and I don't know how else to quite say this, but it feels like there's a lot of like kind of so-called progressives over here in the West speaking on behalf of a people
Yeah.
or a
So,
conflict that they have nothing to do with and don't know anything about just
yeah,
because it's kind of popular to do and it's really big on social media right now and
100%.
social media propaganda is like in full force. And to be honest, the social media element of all this, I've seen it. It's overwhelming. And
Yeah.
there's reasons for this, right? I mean, there's so few Jews in the world that I think that's one of the reasons that our voices will get drowned out.
Oh, and sometimes the voices that don't get drowned out are terrible too. But I will say,
Yeah,
I think you're kind of hitting this is the issue with it. I said I don't want to talk to people. I have absolutely no, and I've talked to Palestinians about this, and I would much rather talk to
me
someone
too.
who's Palestinian. It's not like, yay, let's talk about something horrible, but it's like there's a shared, we're going through this. I know we're going through different things, obviously, but you have a stake in this. This is of course, we should talk. I'm happy to listen to you. I'm curious to listen to you because I want to hear your experience. I've never wanted to not have a conversation with a Palestinian about this. And I've found that I have had conversations, and usually, I mean, it's their own experience. They're well informed in the way that they need to be to have a like it's a proper discussion. I don't know how else to explain that.
Yeah, I find it to be
It's
usually a
the
better
people who have no
conversation.
fucking clue what they're talking
Yeah,
about,
what do you call
or
that curve? What do you call that? Like, the
oh,
Dunning-Kruger
yeah,
effect
the Dunning-Kruger
is
effect.
so strong with this conflict.
It's the people who have no connection to either, who are getting their information from wherever, and maybe they're piecing it together. Maybe they are well informed in a lot of things. But like, honestly, you have no personal stake. How about you just focus on your own stuff? You don't know what's going on. You don't know the same way that someone who is connected to it does.
Mhm.
So don't talk to me about it. Don't post about it. You're welcome to have your opinions. You're welcome to discuss it whenever you want to. Were you gonna say something there? I think I'm
I like
overstepping. I knew I
well,
would do this. I knew I
I
would
don't
get
think
into it, and then
you're
I have, like,
overstepping. I'm actually wondering
these
if I agree or not because I do
oh,
agree, and yet I can also understand somebody if they feel they're informed and care about a topic just because they care
yeah,
about it.
that's fair.
So I don't wanna tell people, "Hey, you can't."
Okay,
But
okay,
that being said,
that's
I
fair.
agree
No,
with
no,
you in
and
general about
no, I
having
appreciate
personal
that.
stake in it. Yeah.
I knew I would do this. Okay, so this is my disclaimer to everyone. I get really upset. I get really emotional about this, and then I say things, and then I feel like I could have said it better. So this is Josh is
No, I think you said that
doing a good
really
job with
well, but I
that, but
think it's a
like
minefield. I think
it's a
that's why we were
minefield, and I
so
don't wanna
scared.
tell people not to talk, but, like, how about being a little less aggressive with your opinions
Maybe be
about
a little
something that you're
humble,
not?
have some humility.
Yeah, maybe, like, still ask for people's experiences, or
You
don't. You don't have to either. Like, you
you
really don't
always
have to. Understand that you feel you're right, people feel obligated, like, "Oh, we care about this thing." There are so many things to care about that you could probably okay, there are things that people should care about that they are distracted by this sometimes too. I don't know, like, I hear
it
a
feels
lot
again like
about
the
this.
scapegoating
I don't
of the
hear a
Jew,
lot
right?
about people trying to, like, help the women in Iran as much as they really could be helping them. I don't hear that much about the genocide happening in Yemen. Do people even and this
This
is
is
from someone who barely
yeah.
follows the news.
This is where it feels like and again, this is hard to explain to some people sometimes because it comes back to blood libel and
Mm,
how anti-Semitism is kind of formed throughout history, right? And anti-Semitism, I've always kind of felt this. It's not really the same exactly as other types of bigotry. Correct me if I'm wrong here, and I think I might have talked about this in the identity episode as well. If you're a racist, for example, I think usually that's about looking at another race that you classified as another race as inferior in some way, right? Or you think about a superior race in some way, right? There's a difference between the races. And it's usually a bigotry where you kind of look down, I guess, on others. When it comes to anti Semitism, it's more this shape shifting conspiracy theory that posits that Jews are responsible for whatever the current
yeah,
problems of the
yeah,
people or nation are or the world are at the time.
yeah.
It happens when countries are dealing with mass problems, maybe in their economy, whatever it might be that you're dealing with. Somehow it's the Jews.
And
And
didn't we talk about this with conspiracy theories
I
too?
think we
If you
probably
go
did. Yeah.
further far enough into any conspiracy, it's usually the
Yeah.
Jews. Yeah.
Yeah. It's usually, it
How do we
somehow
know it
gets to
isn't,
the Jews.
Josh? How do we know it's not us?
I know it's not us. That's the point. It's not me and you. I wish I owned the banks, but I don't run the banks. And I definitely don't run the media. And honestly, if Jews ran the media, you would think the media would be saying some different shit right now.
I was supply teaching and a girl said, "Oh, I'm just saying like 6 million is too many. It's too many." And I said like, "Hey, can you I tried to talk to her quietly to the side and she started yelling. She's like, "Oh, you just think that because the Jews control everything." And I was like, "Whoa,
Mm.
what's happening?" And she got mad at me for even saying, "Hey, could you watch what you're saying? You don't know who's in the classroom, what has happened to them, maybe their families." And I'm thinking of me. I'm like, my family is part of that. Like,
Yeah, mine too.
stop, stop. And yeah, she flipped out at me. Obviously, that's one case, but I
That
hear
you
stuff like that all
experienced
the
that.
time. I hear that
It's
stuff like that
amazing
all
how
the
if it
time.
happens just a few times, you're like, "Well, it must happen to other people more, right?" It's probably just that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't have to see that's kinda crazy that that's an experience that you had, and it's okay to be upset about that.
Oh, I
Right.
was. And yeah, yeah, I don't know if
I
it's the
think
whole thing,
so.
but yeah,
We
it
wouldn't tell somebody else they shouldn't be upset. If somebody told a black person like, "Hey, slavery wasn't that big a deal."
she
You wouldn't
or we don't
imagine
even really believe it happened. And there
or
are
that.
people who say that to them, and they should be
You know what?
justifiably pissed
Imagine if
about that.
somebody said there was good reason for slavery. Like, that's
Jeez.
what people sometimes say, I once heard somebody they were going through the history saying, "This happened to the Jews in this country, and this happened to the Jews in that country, and the Holocaust happened, and 6 million
You
Jews
gotta
were
wonder, what have these
murdered."
Jews been
And I
doing to
thought,
piss
yeah,
people off so much?
that's exactly what they said, and
Of course,
I
yeah, of
thought they
course it
were
is.
about to I thought they were informing people what the Jews have gone through, and instead they looked at it like, obviously the Jews
They
did
must suck.
something.
They must suck.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
it wouldn't happen, right? They don't
Mhm.
understand how it's easy to scapegoat certain minorities and why it's so easy to scapegoat the Jews
And
throughout
it
history,
does
right?
happen. So there are also statistics that help people that almost, I don't want to say they support this, but they easily feed into the idea that we control media.
Mhm.
Like, okay, if you look at Hollywood or entertainment, there's a disproportionate number of Jewish
Yeah.
people.
Well,
There's a
why?
disproportionate because Jews generally value education and
But
we're,
yeah, but there's a specific reason in Hollywood. I don't know if you know this. In
oh, because
Hollywood,
we're entertainers. We were allowed to be funny. We're not allowed to be
well,
what?
getting there.
I don't know.
So
There's a lot of different
I
things
feel like
that
I'm
could
testing you
contribute to it.
as
As
the
the
film
film
guy who
guy,
lives in
tell me as the
Hollywood.
film guy. Okay.
I live in East Hollywood now, by the way.
I don't know what that means.
It's just
Never been
it has
to
Hollywood in the name,
California.
so I thought it was worth.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, you're real Hollywood now.
so
Okay.
Jews didn't used to be allowed to be hired, even in the United States, in various industries. They weren't allowed to be hired in a lot of companies. Walt Disney was famously anti-Semitic, right?
Mhm.
And so Jews went to the desert. Jews are great in the desert, apparently. They built up Hollywood because they couldn't. It's something that Jews would do. They would start companies and start their own thing
Right.
because they couldn't get hired elsewhere. Obviously, when you take on a lot of risk, it's more
Mm.
likely to have some success, right? So, like the Warner Brothers, they were Jews, or Metro Goldwyn Mayer, MGM,
Right.
right? You had the Marx Brothers, you had the Three Stooges. It's disproportionate because Jews kind of built up
They
the
built up their
entertainment
own.
industry, and then they started to compete and maybe win out against the competition.
It's the
And
same with
so,
banks too. Like, they weren't allowed like, Chris I think at least this was many, many years ago, but traditionally, Christians lending money was seen as dirty business. I think
so
something that
that's
they're
what they
not
gave
allowed
the
to do.
Jews to
So
do.
that's what
Yeah. So
able
then
to
Jews were
do.
the money lenders and the money
Yeah,
grabbers,
and it
and
kinda
Jews were
just
associated with money because that was the only job they could get.
self-perpetuates. Yeah.
It's true. So interestingly enough, anti-Semitism created some of the circumstances that people are now being anti-Semitic
Oh,
about.
yeah. Yeah.
Anti-Semitism meant Jews couldn't get certain jobs except these kind of negatively portrayed jobs. And then because Jews do those jobs in a greater proportion, people go, oh, there's something about them.
Mm. This probably seems like a good place to stop and not something that we're artificially doing after we've recorded the entire episode.
Yeah, we definitely haven't recorded for too long and feel the need to split this into 2 episodes. This is just a totally organic thing that is happening
Yeah,
right now.
it's fine. Yeah.
So why don't we stop here and
Okay,
pick it up in the next episode?
let's do that. This has been another episode of Adulthood Friends. Thank you for joining us. Please continue to join us on all the places where we are. Wherever you're listening is probably good, or maybe you can find other places.
Feel free to shop around.
Feel free to shop around.
Yeah.
Yes, shop
Find what's
around.
right for you.
YouTube or
Like a
the other
mattress.
places. Yes. We don't have any mail order ones, like those little ones that come in tiny boxes, ND. But if you can find the podcast version or the listening platform version of ND or Casper is maybe more well known in the US. Do you know what I'm talking about, Josh? You're looking around like you have no idea what I'm saying right now.
Are you talking about mattresses?
Yeah, you talked about mattresses.
Oh,
You
I
used to
did
shop
this?
around.
Oh,
Yeah, you
wow.
did this. This is
This is
your
my
fault.
fault?
Yeah. Do I have
How
to
do we
keep
usually end
talking?
this thing? You're giving the
I
anti-Semites look.
know.
They're just like,
Yeah.
wow, these guys,
That's what I'm saying. I can't I
they
can't be a
deserve it.
spokesperson. They hate me. I'm
They
very
deserve it.
hateable. Yeah. Look at how this girl tries to
I
end a
hope they don't
podcast
get
talking about
jobs.
mattresses. I might not. I'm very
No,
unemployed.
you're such a
Uh,
sweet, wonderful person. That's not.
oh, that's nice. What? Why would you say that to me?
You're the best teacher.
No, I'm not.
Students love you. Your friends love you. Everybody
Well,
loves
that's
you.
nice. Everybody loves you too. I'm sure your students love having math and English explained
That's
to
right.
you.
I have students.
Yeah, you have students. Yeah, you have students too. I feel like if you're gonna like a Jew, you might like us.
If we say
God.
we're the chosen people, does that mean we think we're better than other people?
I would never say that I'm the chosen people.
But if Jews say that, is that what Jews mean?
I think Jews need to stop saying that.
Okay, but
I
no, you're making
I
it
am
worse by
very
saying that, though.
I think we should stop saying that. I
But
think it's a weird thing to say.
I don't like saying that either. But for the record, it's not what Jews mean when they say they're the chosen people.
Well, like, chosen for what? That's the whole thing. No, but seriously, like,
No, they
I do
mean they
think
literally.
okay, maybe this
It's
is what we disagree on, Josh, because I
they
think we should
disagree.
stop.
They believe God chose the Jews to be responsible for upholding certain laws and to be a light unto the nations. Not that you're better than everybody else. In fact, they
Okay.
look at some people see it kind of like a burden.
Yeah, but
Like,
that's like a kid being like, it's really hard being my parents' favorite that I have all these
no, but
special rules. Like,
favorite.
that's how it feels.
I don't think anyone ever
I think
says
there's some
favorite.
favoritism suggested in the term chosen
Really?
people.
Then why do we get mass murdered every 100 years?
Because we keep saying we're chosen people, we need to stop doing that. No, I don't think that's why.
Oh, wow. Blaming the victim.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Oh,
Darvo.
man.
I
It's
don't
my
know.
internalized anti-Semitism.
That's a thing, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I'm showing you it.